In terms of the presentation, I must tell you, it is a very broad topic, so I could probably spend the entire day speaking to you on it. So I've basically chosen different elements regarding nutrition and diet, and hopefully as well I'm trying to make it as practical with the research that we have so that you can go back to your different offices and actually share the information with your cancer survivors. To start, I think everyone needs a bit of a aha for the day, so I thought this would be the one that I'd give you. It actually won the Cairns Award in 2007 for the most impressive clip. In 2007, a very well-known singer said the following: "In August of 2003, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 32. As an outdoor enthusiast, I was viewed as a model of health by others. I stood uncomfortably vulnerable in the spotlight of a disease that knows no boundaries and shows no discrimination. I was fortunate enough to know that staying active and eating right were going to be two of my greatest allies in my journey to wellness." And this was, of course, Sheryl Crow. Now, in terms of actually clarifying what cancer survivor is, I think from a nutritional perspective, a person has to be very careful in actually terming where we look at diet and cancer survivors. So it's just important to know that the needs of people currently undergoing therapy are likely to be different from those people whose metabolic functions have been altered as a result of therapy, and for those from those of people who are evidently fully recovered and whose functions are intact. Now, in most instances, I'll obviously be looking at people after they've undergone therapy and moving forward. Many of you will remember that we here 2 years ago spoke about the nutrition recommendations, which had then just actually come out, and they are published in the Food, Nutrition, Physical Activity and the Prevention of Cancer, a Global Perspective. And this was a publication by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research. They actually reviewed thousands of scientific articles and looking at the balance of evidence. And what they also did indicate was that the recommendations are intended for cancer survivors as well. So this was what they put as one of their addendums in terms of recommendations. All cancer survivors to receive nutritional care from an appropriately trained professional, if unable or if able to do so, and unless otherwise advised, aim to follow the recommendations for diet, healthy weight, and physical activity. Now, some of you weren't there, so I'm just going to basically flip through the recommendations so you can get a bit of an idea of the type of recommendations that are evidence-based in terms of nutrition. And so this is a very high level of evidence that has been shown to be beneficial to people from a prevention point of view, as well as for the cancer survivor. So when we're looking at what is the level of evidence, you might remember on our first day that with our first presentation, it was very clearly indicated that there are different levels of evidence. In other words, looking at research, we do know that some studies are more well controlled and we get better results and less bias. And so what we look at most likely are studies like randomized controlled trials, and of course the gold standard that we're looking at is things like a meta-analysis, etc. So what are some of these guidelines? Well, firstly, looking at body mass index. And if you're not sure about body mass index, I'd like to say to you to go to the cancer website, where you can actually work out your own BMI. Body mass index is basically looking at a person being in proportion, their weight and their height. And of course, that's an indication of health. It's a very simple indication. It can be done in any forum as long as you've got a scale and a height meter. You can actually work out the BMI for the person. In terms of the recommendations for adults, we're looking at a recommendation of between 21 and 24 actually been shown to be the best BMI from a reduction in disease risk. Also, it's another very easy basically a measurement to do is that of waist circumference. I don't know how many of you have ever done your waist circumference, but especially for ladies, if you're looking at your waist circumference, you just take a tape measure and you'd be able to indicate plus minus 80 centimeters. Anything over 80 centimeters has been shown to actually have an accumulation of fat, obviously in the abdominal area, and that has been shown to increase your risk for disease and obviously cancer. To be physically active as part of everyday life, and recommendations there, obviously to work towards, we're looking at plus minus an hour of an activity, 5 days a week. So I'd like you also, as you actually I'm going through this with you, is to think how far are you from this goal. Limit consumption of energy-dense foods and sugary drinks. I'll actually look at that and actually show you how you can do that. If you drink alcohol, it's very important, especially for women. I've indicated women here because we have our women's conference, but less than 1 drink a day. And very importantly is the actual size of the drink. So, of course, we're looking at standard size drinks, and here is just an indication of what we're actually talking about. In terms of dietary supplements, this is usually something that people self-diagnose and they also self-medicate. And a person has to be very, very careful, especially knowing that there are interactions between certain supplements, particularly herbal supplements, even certain vitamins, and obviously treatment and therapy. So it's important that a person doesn't just recommend dietary supplements. In actual fact, they are actually not recommended from a cancer prevention point of view, and I will indicate as we go on if they are recommended from a cancer survivor point of view. To consume fast foods less sparingly, if at all, and once again, this is evidence-based. Limiting salt intake, and I'll indicate to you how you can do that and make sure that you actually are limiting your salt intake as well. These are all actually problem areas in terms of nutrition. It's been shown to increase the risk for diseases like cancer. Avoid moldy grains and legumes. We've already heard about that. Eat mostly foods of plant origin. And, of course, limit your intake of red meat. And, of course, try and avoid processed meat, which I think many of us eat even on a daily basis, unfortunately. In terms of 300 grams, just to give you an idea of what 300 grams looks like per week, if you look at a person's hand, now, just an average hand, of course, you're looking at basically 2 basic hands. That is going to give you 300 grams of red meat a week. So if you're eating more than that, you're exceeding the recommendation, and that immediately puts you in a category of risk. And it has to be about 1 centimeter thick. In terms of looking a bit further, looking at body weight, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, meat, poultry and fish, soya, fats and oils, salt, vitamin D, etc. I just looked at some topical issues. Of course, I could go on further if there was a time, there wasn't too many time limitations. We could look at things like artificial sweeteners, etc. But at this point in time, I'm just going to mention this.